Okay, all right, guys. I just wanted to explain the 1x20, the new 1x20 program. Now, I'm not. This is not trying to reinvent the wheel. Like Dr. Yessis was amazing. This is just based on my experience, and if you're going to use the Olympic lifts, which I don't think he really, was even considering using those. But let's say that you want to start out, you want to work with some young weightlifters. Well, if you're going to use the Olympic cleans, hang cleans, snatches, any type of Olympic type movement, you know, 20 reps is like, it's not conducive because like the speed is just too high and like it's way more neurological or neuromuscular than it is muscular. So keeping the reps between 3 and 5 is going to be the better choice. So it's usually like 1 to 2 of these per day, like if you want to do a clean and jerk on Monday, snatch on Wednesday, and then, a power clean and power jerk on Friday and a power snatch for blocks, perfect. Then like the overhead movements or any type of like jump. I'm not going to call it plyometric because if you're doing 5 to 10 reps, it's not plyometric. Not in the way that Verkhoshansky had in mind. But, 5 to 10 reps just because overhead, just, that structure with your arms holding something above your head or press from split or a SOTS press. If you're, a SOTS press is when you're in the bottom of say a front squat and in that bottom of that position, you're doing a press while you're in the bottom of the squat. Like, you're not going to do that for 20 reps. It's just it makes more sense, choosing 1 to 3 of these per day. Like, and keeping it the same each day is probably better because you want to. The whole point of the 1x20 program is to, is to do it to the point where it's specific and you're learning that motor pattern. So if you want to get good at overhead squats, doing those and a push press every day, pick something that that means the most to what you're trying to accomplish. And then when it comes to like a squat and or a hinge, that's important to you, the sport of weightlifting. Keeping the reps 8 to 15 is probably better, just because 20 reps on a squat is on a back squat with a barbell is, that's could be dangerous. I mean, especially when you're already doing so many other movements, but it just seems to make more sense to keep it between 8 and 15. Do the movements perfect. Starting with 15 rep max. When you've it's if you read the article, starting with a low, like a 6 to 7 RPE, and then by the time you've maxed it out, then perfect. Drop to 12, then drop to 10, then do 8s, and then it's probably time to do a more progressive overload type program anyway. Same for the 5 to 10 rep max. Same for the 5 and 3s. And then when it comes to this is like more of a traditional type 1x20 program, like a belt squat, a goblet squat, split squats. Yeah, starting with 20 rep max. Like I said, started with something like a 6 RPE, which is, if you read the article, I've kind of got a guess of what that might be. But and then once you've reached a true 20 rep max, then drop to a 15 rep max. Do that for a few weeks. You might want to come back to the 20 once you've maxed out the 15 rep max, go back to 20, do that whole cycle one more time, maybe. Or time to move on to a different program. It's fine. But here are my suggestions. Because you've already done a squat and hinge, these are optional for you. But start with one for the lateral squat group. So like I just said, maybe a lateral lunge. These are the blue are the movements I suggest. Dumbbell or kettlebell, bench press, dumbbell, kettlebell, bent over row, a military press, a pull up or a chin up. I don't know if you're going to get 20 on that, but you're going to go as big as you can. Vertical row, that's a dumbbell or kettlebell upright row, and a vertical push, that's a tricep dip. Then over here, because at this point you already got 12 exercises and we're telling you should start with about 15, maybe on week 1, start with calf raises and like a kettlebell, supine, hip flex. This is where you're going to be laying on a block and you're going to be pulling one knee to your chest and then doing hip flexion work. You can either have a partner push that leg down. I'll tell you what, in the article, I'll make sure I put a link to this video because it's a little bit complicated to explain to the point where you would understand it. So I'll make sure I put a link to that. Then and then just something for rotation. And then each week you can start to add, eventually one straight leg calf movement, one seated calf movement, and then one tibialis movement. And then you can do 1 or 2 hip flexors, then one hip extension, one abduction, one adduction movement, one hip external rotation movement, one hip internal rotation movement, a shoulder external rotation, and maybe a lower trap. So 1 to 2 movements there, one there, till you get to 25. That's 15 to 25 is the best range. Now moving on down to exercises for sports performance, which is what most of you are after. So if you want to, once again, if you want to do like one per day, most of you are going to do a power clean or a clean. So just keep it the same because you want to get really good at that because you guys are sports performance. So choose the movement you're after and get really good at it. Same thing. Start with a 5 rep max, at about a 6 RPE, and then each week add 5 to 10 pounds, and then to get to a true 5 rep max, then drop to a 3. Same thing. What I just mentioned about overhead and jumps. Keep it, 5 to 10 rep max seems to make the most sense. So and keep them the same each day, so you get really good at overhead squats, really good at precision squat jumps. And then on this one, I just it's just really going to go for the squatting when it comes to the 8 to 15 rep max. Front squat is the easiest because it's self-spotting. If someone does something crazy and adds too much weight and they miss, they're just going to drop the weight forward. You only need spotters. So front squat is the safest way to start squatting. Then you can pick one from the hinge group. Trap bar deadlift is the safest. It just puts you at the most biomechanically advantageous position. Is basically it's in the middle. The line of force is directly in the middle of the body, so you can't beat that. Then one for the lateral squat, one for the horizontal press, one for the horizontal row, one for the vertical press, one for the vertical pull. Same thing. And then you'll start because at that point you will be at I think it's 12, so you'll need you need 3 more movements. So I chose a calf raise, once again the hip flexion exercise, and then a rotation, and then start adding same thing, adding based on my suggestions until you get to 25 exercises. Now for the youth athlete, forget the cleans. If I were you, unless you're really good at teaching them, but overhead squat and prisoner squat jumps is a great way to get your athletes moving really well. But once again, with overhead squat, 5 to 10 rep max is what I suggest. But then pick one from the squats, one from the hinge, one from the lateral squat, one from the horizontal press, horizontal row, same thing. And then start with one from the hip flexor. This one I suggest an external and an internal rotation, and then a rotation movement. So there you go. Then just add until you get to the 25 movements and go from there. So same thing as all the rest. Hope that makes sense. And I'll put the link, like I said, to the hip flexion exercise in the article. All right, guys.